Hello. I hope so. I hope so. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, today is the first, I believe, the first live stream in the month of the Sacred Heart. So I have a poll on the right. So please, I guess, look at the poll, answer the poll if you're on YouTube. So today we're going to be talking about altar rails, and the reason why we're going to be talking about altar rails is because a variety of reasons. First, I appreciate talking about, like, I love altar rails. I think they should be in more places, and so I am huge at evangelizing this particular thing. But on top of that, the last few videos, I've had questions about the altar rail and the situation with the bishops and like what's going on there. And that's something I'm going to go into. But first, I want to kind of give a brief understanding of what altar rails symbolize. For a large part of the church, it symbolized being being the meeting place between earth and heaven. It's where the priest comes and brings God and distributes to you. And so from the altar to the altar rail is a very, like, it's very symbolic of earth meeting heaven, because we're receiving God at that point. God has come down from heaven on the altar, now is coming to us. And so that's like a huge understanding. But the additional, let's see, after Vatican II, and this kind of goes with the priest crisis video I did, but after Vatican II, one of the changes was that the procession and standing being a norm set. And so it created a situation where the altar rail, practically speaking, was not viable. It was like taking up space. And so I'm using that in the most benefit of the doubt, as charitably as possible. But like that's not all of it, right? Like let's see. I just want to reference this article because it is an important article, and I know I've been shilling for them, if you want to say shilling. National Catholic Register. No, they don't pay me. But I do find a lot of their articles to be really impactful on the topics that I talk about, especially when it comes to trying to do the unthinkable to some people, which is to bring a reverent understanding to the Novus Ordo. And the reason why I say unthinkable, and you'll see this in my comments, where people really bash the idea, like they want TLM only and only TLM. And they won't promote a reverent Novus Ordo, even though most people don't have access to a TLM. And so there's only one other option, right? Like it's either like you don't go to mass, or you try and help your priest, and you support him in making a reverent Novus Ordo. Yeah, it is. Let's see. This is actually, this is gonna make you okay. So yeah, this is a that's a really pretty rail. The sad part is it's in Germany. So like it's like that's like the tragedy of it, is that it is a very beautiful rail. And like even the St. Joseph Shrine that we have that does the TLM in the Archdiocese of Detroit. Well, one of the places that does the TLM. It's not the only place, but that's a German parish. So in the 1800s, it was founded by German immigrants, and so it stayed that way. So yeah. So all right. So this kind of goes, like, if you want a deeper meaning into everything I just said, read this article. It's a really good article. Because like the other points that I brought up, that's really what I want to go over. Because I can address that directly, and not have to basically check with people about theological understanding. So because I am not a theologian, but I am someone who is very passionate about promoting a reverent, the reverent Novus Ordo, and working with your priest, and bringing back an understanding of proper relationship with your priest, right? Like, so like a lot of people will look at the priest as kind of like a religious CEO. Like, he does the sacraments and you're very thankful he does the sacraments, but outside of Sunday, you don't really interact with him, or you don't invite him over for family dinners or family events. It's almost like he's isolated in his corner. And so like that's we need to get rid of that. We need to bring him, like, he's part of the family, and we're part of his family because he's the spiritual father of the community. So so does the Father Eric ever stream the mass? I would love to be able to view the liturgy. Yes, he does. I don't have it right now, but I can provide he only streams it on Twitter. And the problem with that is that Twitter will sometimes not be as loud as what is it? It won't be as loud as what it normally is after it's uploaded on Twitter completely. So it will sound like it's muffled a little bit, and then after it's like uploaded into Twitter, it sounds fine. So that's kind of like the problem there. But yeah, after this, I'll post that on my on Twitter, where I'll say this is where Father Eric streams. Please view it, and so that's what I'll do. Okay, so this isn't about priests. So I'm sorry, I'm not trying to derail it, because last time I got derailed pretty badly when it came to this the topic. So so chat, calm down. So the altar rails. So our altar rails. There's a question that got asked several times in other videos, and some of them not so nice, some of them nice, some of them polite and charitable. But the question came up with, the bishop has to approve renovations. And so that's true. Like in diocese, like the bishop has to approve major renovations to the church. And so how do you deal with that? All right. So this is where I bring in, let's see, right here. Okay, so for the thumbnail that I used, let's see if you can see it on the right side. The thumbnail's whatever. I thought it was funny. So on the right side, you can see in the lower right side, you can see the altar rails, and the altar rails they're not fixtured in. They're not part of the building. They are something that you're able to move. And, some people think that's a crap, they think that's a crappy compromise, but it's like, you quite literally have to work with what you have, right? Like you can't just, be like, all right, well, like this is crap, so we're not going to do it. It's like, no, it's crap. These are not crap. These are beautiful. These are made by in-house carpenters. So they go to our parish and they volunteered to do this because they noticed so many people were kneeling at the kneeler that is right in the middle here. And so that was originally the only thing that you could kneel on. People would proceed, and that was the only thing. And we do the two lines. And if you received on the hand, you received on the hand. If you received kneeling, you can kneel. Like, that was it. But now we have these altar rails here, in addition to it, made by the carpenters in-house. And so that has allowed us to do, what people are more like, they typically understand to be distribution on altar rails, because you start on the right side here, and then the priest just goes around the altar, and then he goes back and does it all over again. And so he makes this circuit. And it also, it typically makes communion go a lot faster as well. But it's the fact that, like, this is what you'll have to probably do. Like, you're probably not going to be able to renovate, and there's a variety of reasons. It's not necessarily that the bishop doesn't want altar rails. Okay, like it's not necessarily that aspect. There, so like where we live in Detroit, so like in the Archdiocese of Detroit, we have what's now called family of parishes, which may be a common thing that many of you have in your own diocese, because frankly speaking, like we're losing people and we have too many buildings for the people that we have. And so with that, it's a matter of, okay, so we have these renovations. Like how, like I'll just give you an example. So you have these renovations at this one parish. Okay, this one parish is really small, and you want to set up $250,000 to make renovations for an altar rail. Beautiful altar rail. Like you're adding stone. You have people in house that are able to remove the price a little bit. They're able to work on it. Everybody in the community works together to raise this money to get these altar rails. Okay. And then 3 years down the road, the parish gets closed because of the family of parishes, and there's a consolidation that has to happen. How absolutely devastating would that be to people? Like it would be traumatic, because people would, like, it would be utterly traumatic for a lot of people. They would think that they invested all this time and energy and money into putting, making the space around the sanctuary holy, and they did do that. The problem is it didn't last long, and so, like, that's not a good feeling. And so, I would have to think that when it comes to some of the bishops, that is something they're seriously considering, and that I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt on that, because I don't think most of them are against altar rails because they're just against altar rails. Now, is there some? Probably. Like yes, I would think that is absolutely the case. In fact, I'm pretty sure some have gone on record saying that. But to think that every single one is the case, I don't think it is. But the reason why I'm doing this is because I am showing you through my example. When I say my example, I mean, like, I've gone to this parish, I've supported my priest, and over 5 years, I went from being, one of two people that received on the tongue to a vast majority of the people at the parish receiving on the tongue. Like, we are now also like a hot spot in our area where people who want, like, they're not able to make it to like St. Joseph's Shrine, they come to us and they worship with us. And so, this is my family, this is my parish. And, Father Eric is, I think, a great spiritual father. And when it comes to implementing, like you'll notice in the video, in the comparison, there's a lot of differences. It's not just the altar rails. It's also the fact that you can see the tabernacle, which you couldn't before, because prior to him being there, there was a stained glass something there. and we moved that to someplace, but now you can see the tabernacle. The cross, the crucifix, is much bigger. And then we have statues on the right side. We also have an infant Christ, I can't remember, statue on the right there. And then we have the Sacred Heart. And so we have definitely, like, in terms of ornaments, like in terms of like, or in terms of just decorating the space, we've made it more hospitable to helping people pray. But it's almost like, it's like the finishing touch was the altar rails, because, like I said, the symbolism there is that where heaven meets earth, where we receive Christ from the priest. So let's see, 1 second. I'm sorry, I'm reading. So yeah, it absolutely is ugly. Yes. But that's how it looked. So here's a great point. that is how it looked when I started to go there. And I spoke with Father Eric, and like I spoke with him, and I talked with him, and I saw that he seemed to be a traditional priest, and I prayed about it. I prayed about it. He prayed about it like throughout all of this stuff. And so it wasn't an implementation that all of a sudden happened. It wasn't like, boom, you now have a more traditional looking uh, space given the, the natural layout of this parish, because the parish was built in the 70s, I believe. Well, yeah, I don't remember when it was built, but it doesn't exactly look like, some of the other parishes that look, just more, let's see, medieval. I think that's a better word for it, but it's like, that's the, I mean, like, that's what you're going to have to deal with. Like, it's not going to look like you want it to look, and that's okay, because the aesthetics of it can be helped, right? Like, this is proof that can happen. Now, does that mean like a priest could come in? So say Father Eric, gets moved or somewhere, and another priest comes in and starts moving things all over the place. Could he do that? Yes, because that's what a priest can do. But in terms of what we've been able to do, like, that's what we've been able to do. And so it's just a matter of, appreciating what you have, and working with God to um, make the space as beautiful as possible to point to Him, right? Like, because that's the point. Let's see. Oh yeah. Okay. Infant of Prague. Yeah. Sorry. All right. So, yeah, but like, I mean, there's different altar rails too, because like, I think a lot of people, like, I don't know, maybe I'm just off, maybe whatever. Maybe I'm just off about the whole idea that people have expectations of altar rails, because maybe this is like similar to what people are thinking of. Um, some people, they want the marble, they want the stone, but then there's some people who just want the wood and the simplicity of it. And both are good, both are fine. And so, um, yeah, I mean, I guess that's like the major point here is, I really want to emphasize, like, this is not something that one will be easy. Because you have to first find a priest that is going to take it upon himself to slowly change the parish. He may abruptly change the parish. That could definitely happen. I know, like, we had a lot of people leave from some of the more simple changes, like the music. Like, the music drove away people, because we decided, like, again, it's not me. I didn't decide this. Father Eric did, but the more traditional sounding music, and we only recently gotten a chance during this time, but it's like, it's a matter of, like, these changes are going to repel people because of what they've been conditioned to, and that's okay. Like, if and it's kind of weird, isn't it? Because you'll have these people who will say, well, it's not about aesthetics, but then people that seem to be in their similar, like, mindset will then leave because of the aesthetics, and they'll just completely drop the community. And so it's going to be rough. And if you're there as a parishioner and you're supporting your priest, like, talk, if he's saying, um I got some criticism from someone saying they didn't like this or whatever, but you did like it. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, like, you do have to voice that. Like, and I know that sounds petty, it sounds simple, but you're also talking about, like, in a lot of cases, one man dealing with a lot of things at the same time. And he's kind of alone in his responsibility. Well, he is alone in his responsibility with the parish. And so, like I used to be a survey statistician. So I used to do survey. I used to analyze surveys, typically satisfaction surveys. So an example of this would be like uh, restaurants. Did you find everything satisfying? Did you get your food in time? Yada yada yada. And it's like that definitely has to happen for a priest, and a priest isn't going to give everyone like a piece of paper and have them answer on a score like how he's doing. He's just going to talk to them. And so if you don't voice that when he talks to you, given that his time is limited, he's only going to be able to understand the feedback to a certain dimension. And so you need to make sure that when something like, say, Ad Orientem was done for Corpus Christi, okay, that's a good time to bring up, hey, I love the fact that you did Ad Orientem. I love the fact that you spoke to God when you were praying. You prayed to God and pointed towards God when you were praying to him. And then when you were talking to the congregation, you were facing us. Like, that makes a lot of sense. So, sorry, I am utterly distracted. Whatever. I'm distracted by chat. So yeah, it is unlikely that the parish priest will make any good changes without you talking to him about it. It's critical parishioners go speak with their priests about wanting a more reverent liturgy. Right. And when it comes to like the younger crowd of priests, when it comes to the under 40 priests, it seems that they are going in that direction. So it isn't just TLMs that are getting this, where they're getting more like priests, but diocesan as well. And again, it does depend on which diocese you're in, because each diocese is run by a bishop, and he's the one, ordaining the priests, right? Like, so he's the one in charge of that. So to a certain extent, that obviously comes into play, but for the most part, generally speaking, yeah, if you have a priest that needs that if you have a priest that is looking to the traditional, like, absolutely support him. So another question I received, and I'm only voicing this because I thought it was really important to voice it, is there's another question I received was, when you're trying to find a priest, like, what questions do you ask? And obviously this is really important, because you're not going to have, like, you don't want to spend like a year at a parish just to find out that the priest is just, he's not going to actually do anything. He's just going to sit on his hands and let things continue to deteriorate. And so one of the things I did with my priest, with Father Eric, and this was actually when he was at another place. It was like very, like, this whole situation I consider to be providential with Father Eric, because like I met him in he was an associate pastor somewhere else. And I started talking to him. I was like, hey, like, I have a few questions for you. Like, what do you think about spiritual warfare? And then he started talking about spiritual warfare. We started getting into the nitty gritty about it. I had just started watching spiritual warfare videos from Father Ripperger, and I wanted to understand, okay, well, how much of it should I take in as a person, like, who's not an exorcist, and how much of it should I understand to be like real and something practical I can do. I don't have the little black book that he sells, but I have it. It's upstairs. I should have brought it down, but like, anyways, but like, that's a question I ask, and I ask it because it's a dimension that in a lot of parishes seems to be ignored or kind of shushed away. And based on the response of that question, to me, it seems like that's a pretty good indicator of how serious the priest is in regards to understanding that aspect. Now, that doesn't mean like that's 100% accurate. It's not 100%. There's no such thing as 100% question. Like, there's no silver bullet to this. I just think that that's a good angle to start, and because it'll reveal a lot about the disposition of the priest. And if you have kids, it's, your job as a parent to make sure that where you're getting spiritual nourishment is good. And that's going to include understanding the priest, especially when you have options. Obviously, if you don't have options, that's just a tough thing to deal with. But, when you do have options, like in the Archdiocese of Detroit, where there's just a lot of parishes, that's what I would recommend. The next question I would ask is, if you notice in Mass there isn't a kneeler, ask if a kneeler can be placed there, because a kneeler is one of the simplest, most parishes have kneelers, even if they don't use them. And if they get enough people, they'll buy one. But it's one of those questions where if you ask, you should also be able to get a good indication of how they feel about it, because it will also lead into some naturally traditional things. You'll start talking about reception on the tongue. You may start talking about veiling, depending on how the conversation is. There's a lot of avenues that can break into, even though it may seem disjointed, only because what's considered traditional is kind of all tied together. And even though you're not talking about it directly, and it may not seem like a necessary direct connection, it's part of the meta, the movements that are going on, right? Like, you're receiving on the tongue, kneeling. If you're a woman, veiling is becoming a thing. A lot of these things are connected. And so even if they're not connected with the subject itself, kneeling has more to do with reception on the tongue than it does with veiling, but veiling may come, especially if you're a woman. That's just kind of an avenue to go towards, because that was a big question in my previous live stream. Now, the other thing I want to emphasize with that is, in all cases, make sure you respect the priest. Even if he gives this fluffy answer to all of these things and you don't like it, or it seems like he's taking you, he's caricaturing you, respect the priest. And if he doesn't like your questions, you'll know, and just move on. Don't harass him, but don't harass him. Don't treat him like he's less than what he is. He is a priest. So again, I just want to emphasize, respect to our priests and bishops are huge. And I never want to give the indication that it's okay to treat them like you would argue with me. You can argue with me, you can get really mad at me and say a bunch of things at me, and that's fine. To a certain extent, obviously I don't want you to sin. But when it comes to the priests, I do have I still, even with priests that are more, liberal and will promote things that seem contrary to the church, I will very much still call them father, even though most people don't call them father. And, I'm sure many of you know who I'm talking about. So let's see. We'll go looking at chat. Oh yeah, I forgot this. Watch on YouTube, join chat. All right, cool. It's still going to be hard to get done. So, okay, all right. So here's a generational thing, right? So it's still going to be hard to get that done. The boomers have a lot of control over the NO parishes, which is often a bad thing. In 5 or 10 years, hopefully it's better as their grip softens. And right, I have in other videos mentioned that we are in a type of exile, and that we're waiting for just like in Exodus, waiting for the next generation, the previous generation, to pass. However that may be, if it's retirement or something else, but most often it's going to be death, right? They're going to pass naturally, and hopefully peacefully, and in the arms of Our Lady and Jesus. And the idea of waiting for them to, sorry, now the banner is like throwing me off. So it's so you still want to, like, if something's not being done and it hasn't been done for a while, like, test the waters. Like, if you're at a parish like you've been at for like a decade, like, test the waters to see like what the priest will do. Like, you do have to actualize your requests. You can't just have them in your head, and like, as much as you pray about them, like, you do have to act. You're part of the church too. Like, this is what is it? Venerable Fulton Sheen mentioned that this is the time of the laity, or something to that effect. And so, take advantage of it. Like, Vatican II has allowed us to do that. Like, prior to Vatican II, I would not be able to have this podcast situation going on. Not without having a priest on and doing this with the priest, because like the media was limited when it came to teaching the faith. Um, but like, when it comes to this, like, I'm giving you as one parishioner at a parish, to you guys out there, just how I've gone about doing this. Because in the last, 15 years, I've been at 3 different dioceses: Lansing, Kalamazoo, and the Archdiocese of Detroit. And I've had to do this. I've tried this several times, where you have to go around and see which parish is is going to be the right one for you, where you'll find spiritual nourishment. Now, I'm not saying everything needs to be like, everything's totally subjective. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, like, it's going to depend on what you have available. So what you have available as parishes, and then what you can get to as a person to where you're at. So like, for example, I went to Kalamazoo and I went to a lot of different places, and I ultimately ended up going to St. Mary's. And the reason why I went to St. Mary's was I kept getting kind of stuck with like nobody talking to me at any of the parishes I went to. And then I went, I specifically looked for a TLM mass, well, traditional Latin mass. I'm not going to say mass twice, whatever. And I saw it at St. Mary's. And then when I went to St. Mary's, like, I attended my first Latin mass. And then immediately after, I got talked to by a guy named Terry, really swell guy. I ended up getting to know him for several years before we moved. And he came up and he started talking to me, and it was very welcoming, and more welcoming than the NO parishes. But that parish was one of those unicorns, where it had both a TLM and an NO, and the NO was incredibly reverent. And so it was really weird to me, because like, looking back on it, it was prepping me for coming into the Archdiocese of Detroit, because that's where I was going to grad school. And so like, that helped me understand which parishes to go to. Because when we moved here in the Archdiocese, it took us 9 months to find a parish. Like, it took us 9 months, and we went to dozens of parishes. And so it was kind of an intense thing. But like, getting back to the boomer thing, because I know I've gone on that tangent. If you show up at a parish and you don't know the person, and you have like, you can't really expect him to respect what you're asking if you haven't invested a little bit in. So that's kind of where, after you have the questions done, you then follow up and you go to that parish, and you follow, you stay there for a bit. And yeah, you're going to have boomers there, because boomers are still alive, right? Like, they're kicking. And some have come to understand, I should say, that, what they grew up with was not necessarily what they should have been taught. And so they're recognizing that as a, like, you'll find kind of like these like boomers that understand the situation. They're like, yeah, let's go to the traditional route. And you know, I would say like at our parish, like that's happened. And but you know, there's some boomers who get mad because they don't want to see the back of the priest. And man, does that make the news. Like that is the weirdest thing, that one, like that makes the news. But like unfortunately, like for a lot, that connection with looking at the face of the priest is like they're conditioned to see that. And for some reason it's so bad that they think that the priest looking away from them is bad for them. And that's unfortunate. Like that's not a good thing. And I'm not trying to excuse them. What I'm saying is, you know, there's a sympathy there. Like they shouldn't be like okay, I don't want to say they shouldn't be, because I don't want to overstep my bounds here. But the idea that they're offended that the priest is doing ad orientem is a weird thing to get mad at the end of the day, I guess is what I should say. So investing in a parish, even if they have boomers, is still a good thing. Because eventually, like, the boomers will be gone. You know, you'll be saying, you will be part of, you know, will be at their funerals, and you will be praying for them, and that's a good thing. But then, you know, you're also helping, you know, move the parish in a particular direction with the priest, again, if the priest is open to it. So that's more of like a secondary aspect, right? Like, you ask the questions, find the priest. All right, you found the priest, you see the parish. Maybe he's tied because of the boomers, maybe he's tied because of a elderly bishop or something, and you just stick with him. Because that, you know, especially with the bishop, it's not going to matter where you go in the diocese. And so that's something to just be cognizant of. So again, respect the bishops, respect the priests, but you know, act prudently, I should say. Let's see. Kneelers are a good gateway drug. Yeah, I mean, like I would definitely support that. Let's see. Okay. The smell of the sanctuary is a good tell too. So like that would be like, all right, do they enjoy, or not enjoy, but do they use incense? Another thing is sounds. So like we have bells that go off during the consecration. So like we have the altar boys, they'll ring the bells, and 3 times, and that's also something that people could be looking for, because for whatever reason, it's like the smells and bells are, like, in a lot of parishes are taken away, have been taken away. The kneelers have been taken away. Like there's just so much bare. And so like, oh yeah, I forgot to talk about this. So like there's this one like there's a philosophy that used to be pretty dominant, and it might be one of the reasons, I don't know for sure, but it might be one of the reasons why so much of the sanctuary was kind of gutted from iconography, statues, and the altar rail, is that it was a philosophy that um, the heaven and earth meeting was, I don't want to say it was rejected outright, but there was the understanding that everything there, the sacred and the profane should mix. Like everything is sacred, everything is profane, or something to that effect. And obviously, like, that's problematic, because there is such a thing as the sacred, there is such a thing as the profane. Profane meaning casual, not vulgar. Only in language, I think, does that have that connotation. But it's this understanding that, like, you know, the altar rails shouldn't be there because it limits people access to heaven or something like that. Like, because they're not looked at as being, they're looked at as gatekeeping the sacred or something like that. And this is a real, like, this is a philosophy that happened. I just don't know how prevalent it is. it was, but I have read about it several times. I just don't have any articles to give you. If I do have articles that I find in the next few days, I will be putting it under in the comment section, and I will pin it to make sure, because I don't want to give the impression that all the priests were like this. I'm making sure I'm having a lot of like statements like if, maybe, like not all, like, because I don't want to give the impression that I'm painting with a very broad brush. If it does end up being the fact that a lot of the bishops believe that, I will then put that down in the pinned comment. So, yeah. So, because again, I don't want to say anything wrong against bishops. I literally just got done saying you got to respect your bishops and priests. So I don't want to give the impression that I'm trying to paint too broadly a brush. So, do you kneel for communion without a kneeler? Yes, I've done that at several places. The biggest worry that I have right now, because especially when people are still using the COVID excuse, is going to a place and being concerned that they won't give me communion on the tongue, kneeling, because they'll be like, oh, COVID. But I do have a video where I give a very, I'm not going to go into the details here, but during my grandfather's funeral, that wasn't fun. But it was how to deal. I think it's how to deal with bad priests. That was a video that me and John did. And so I tell the story of what happened at my grandfather's funeral. That was pretty intense. But yeah, to answer your question with that tangent, I do kneel for communion without a kneeler. Okay, so yeah, that's kind of, so anyways, St. Ignatius, or I'm sorry, not St. Ignatius, St. Thomas Aquinas. And that's because St. Thomas Aquinas, in one of his objections, which, oh my gosh, now I have to like actually look on my phone. I'm sorry, this is really unprofessional. But if we were having a conversation in real life, I would do this too. So I would look at the phone and I would bring it up. So I'm just being incredibly honest. In the Summa Theologica, whether dispensing of the sacrament belongs to a priest alone, objection 1 says, at the end of it, therefore, with equal reason, the dispensing of Christ's body does not belong to priests only. And then he answers, which means he corrects the objection. The dispensing of Christ's body belongs to the priest for the 3 reasons. First, because as was said above, he consecrates as in the person of Christ, but as Christ consecrated his body at the supper. So also he gave it to the others to be partaken of by them. Accordingly, as the consecration of Christ's body belongs to the priest, so likewise does the dispensing belong to him. Secondly, because the priest is the appointed intermediary between God and the people, hence as it belongs to him to offer the people's gifts to God, so it belongs to him to deliver consecrated gifts to the people. Thirdly, because out of reverence towards the sacrament, nothing touches it, but what is consecrated. Hence the corporal and the chalice are consecrated, and likewise the priest's hands for touching the sacrament. Hence it is not lawful for anyone else to touch it except for necessity, for instance, if it were to fall upon the ground, or else in some other case of emergency. Now, giant caveat. So I'm clarifying this because I have to. The church, as a matter of discipline and with extraordinary ministers, has allowed the laity to distribute the sacrament. And so obviously what the church states trumps what St. Thomas Aquinas says. That being said, I believe the nature of what he's saying fits perfectly with the understanding of altar rails, because that is where heaven meets earth, and symbolically. And that is a very, like, I mean, I don't know, maybe we'll get back to the discipline and we'll be like, oh, we messed up. I kind of hope we do. But again, I'm clarifying, even though he stated, it is not lawful. That is not technically true today. And so I'm clarifying that as a matter of justice, because I am not above the church. I'm not going to pretend I'm above the church, because that's not who I am. I'm not consecrated. I'm not the Pope. I'm not the magisterium. So I'm being very emphatic about this point because I don't want anybody to say that I suggested otherwise, because I don't. Uh, oh, I love your videos. They're really good. Happy I got to catch it live. Oh, thank you, Swag Out. So, all right, Error, we're not going to know what your image is. Okay. All right. I guess I'm just going to have to look it up. Yeah. So that's another thing. So like and you don't need EMs if you have a rail. So this is coming back to the original point. And so I guess my wife like hooked me back in. So the idea of extraordinary ministers, like the amount of time it takes us to go from right to left back again, like it's really fast. And the amount of time it would take to do extraordinary ministers, like how like they get up there and they all line up, and then the priest basically has to do any line reception of however they receive. And then they go out and everyone makes sure they have the chalices and everything. Like, to a certain extent, I understand that for a very large parish. But if you have like 100 people at your mass, that seems excessive. And we do. So here's the other thing. So we receive on the tongue, like a lot of us receive on the tongue, and those of us that receive on the tongue also receive both species. So we receive intinction, like we do intinction. If you receive in the hand, obviously you're not supposed to distribute on the hands intinction. So Father Eric doesn't, but so you're able to get both species with intinction, and it's very like everything happens really fast. Like it's really weird, the claim that like doing a rail goes really slow and people receiving on the tongue takes more time. It really doesn't. And so like I'm kind of like just addressing that now. And you also don't need extraordinary ministers. And the more people, like just statistically speaking, the more people you have handing out the hosts, the more likely particles are going to fall. And so, shameless plug, go and see my video about why Catholics should care about how they receive, because I show 100 takes of reception in the hand and 100 takes of reception on the tongue over a blackboard, so you can see how many would-be particles would be there. We use unconsecrated hosts, so they're just wafers, and it's a really good showing of, like, I'm a statistician, and I was just like, hey, what can I do? And during Mass one day, this came to me, and I was like, Father Eric, you interested in this? And he's like, sure, that sounds great. And so after 3 weekends, with a few errors in the first two, we were able to finally get it right. And so please look at that video. The amount of particles that fall are pretty high when you start receiving on the hand. Oh, that's an interesting point. I guess that would depend on the handicap. Like, it's much easier to kneel and not fall over. Yeah, I guess it depends. I don't know what handicap you're referring to, but yeah, I guess it depends. Right. So like, because like reception on the tongue is, well, yeah, basically from the priest's hands to your tongue, whereas like reception in the hand is from the priest to your hand, and then from your hand, if you just take it from the main hand and put it in your mouth, that's one. But then you add another step if you do this. And so now you've added several more points of contact and several more chances of the host breaking as you're trying to receive. Again, it is allowed. I'm not going to say it's not allowed. But I do believe people should watch that video to see how much falls with just 100 people doing each. Let's see. I would put my money. All right, so we're taking bets, I guess. And Saint Ignatius of Antioch, I'm the wheat of God, and let me be the ground by the teeth of the wild beast, that I may be found pure bread of Christ on this fed to lions. Okay, that makes sense. So okay, so I think that's it, unless there's like a few more things. I just want to say I do appreciate this back and forth. I love having like these conversations um, with chat, or like seeing chat just kind of go off the wall, because it's happened a few times where it's like not even the same topic, just completely doing its own thing. But I do appreciate everyone who's watching me here. You know, I appreciate the fact that other people think that, you know, what I say has value, and so it means a lot to me. And you know, in the future, if I happen to die, you know, it's helpful to know that other people are. It's kind of like a indicator, like, all right, my kids may listen to me. So, but that's um, all right, Massachusetts. I will look forward to it. So, thank you everyone for watching, and have a great day.